The great hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with lights from 1,000 worlds. Representatives from 63 species gathered to celebrate a special day. It had been exactly 247 years since humanity disappeared from galactic affairs. Council leader Zex Thor stood at the central platform, his 4 arms raised in triumph. His scales gleamed blue under the lights. His voice echoed through the chamber. Peace. That began when the humans finally understood they did not belong among the stars. Laughter rippled through the assembled delegates. The humans had always been strange. They asked too many questions. They worried about threats that did not exist. And then, one day, they simply left. Their colonies went silent. Their ships vanished. The galaxy moved on without them. In the back of the Great Hall, a young woman sat alone. Sarah Kim was one of maybe 1,000 humans still living in council space. She worked as an archivist in the Forgotten Records department. Nobody paid attention to old files anymore. That was exactly why Sarah loved her job. She listened to Zex Thor's speech and felt anger burning in her chest. Her people were not cowards. They did not run away. But she had no proof, just a feeling that something was wrong with the official story. The humans were weak. Zex Thor continued. They could not handle the complexity of galactic politics. They returned to their little corner of space to hide. And we are better for it. More laughter. More agreement. Sarah stood up quietly and left the hall. Nobody noticed. She walked through the crystal corridors of Vatharon Prime, the Council's homeworld. Everything here was beautiful and clean. No wars had touched this place in centuries. The Council species had built a perfect civilization. Or so they believed. Sarah took the old elevator down to the archive levels. These floors were deep underground, where the ancient records were stored. Most files were digital now, but the oldest treaties and agreements were still kept in physical form. Paper and metal plates that could last forever. She had been searching through these files for 3 years, looking for anything about humanity's departure. The official records said humans chose to leave. They voted to abandon their council seat. But Sarah had found small inconsistencies, dates that did not match, references to documents that no longer existed. Today, she found something new. It was a metal plate, stored in a container marked with symbols she barely recognized, old human military codes. Her hands shook as she pulled it out and placed it under the scanner. The text appeared on her screen. It was a treaty, signed 247 years ago, by the human representative and the council leadership. But this was not a withdrawal agreement. It was a volunteer contract. Sarah read it 3 times to make sure she understood. The words were clear. Humanity had discovered something in the outer reaches of the galaxy, an ancient threat, something that had destroyed civilizations before, something that was coming back. The humans had asked the council for help. The council had laughed. They said the threat was impossible. Just human paranoia. So humanity made a different choice. They would go alone. They would evacuate their colonies near council space. They would take their ships and their people to the edge of the galaxy. They would build a defensive line. They would guard the outer reaches and buy time for the rest of the galaxy. Even if the council did not believe them, even if the council forgot them, the treaty had one simple clause. When the threat reveals itself, humanity requests that the council remember this agreement and send aid. Sarah's hands were shaking harder now. She copied the file to her personal device and ran back to the elevator. She had to tell the council. They had to know the truth. The celebration was still going when she burst into the Great Hall. Security guards moved to stop her, but she shouted, "I have proof! Proof about humanity!" The hall went silent. Zex Thor looked down at her with annoyance. "The archivist's child," he said. "What nonsense do you bring us now?" Sarah held up her device. A treaty, signed 247 years ago. Humanity did not abandon the galaxy. They went to defend it. They are out there right now, fighting something we refuse to believe existed. She transferred the document to the main display. The treaty appeared for everyone to see. Zexthor barely glanced at it. An old paper. Probably a fake. The humans were always dramatic. They invented threats to make themselves seem important. But what if it's real? Sarah demanded. What if they have been fighting for 247 years while we celebrated their absence? Then they are fools, Zexthor said coldly. The outer reaches are empty. Our long-range sensors would detect any threat. There is nothing there but human paranoia. Other council members nodded in agreement. A few looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up for Sarah. Ambassador Thelnara of the Velkorian delegation stood slowly. She was old, even by Velkorian standards. Her scales had faded to pale gray. I knew humans once, she said quietly. They did not lie about dangers. Perhaps we should investigate. Investigate what? Zexthor snapped. Empty space? We have real problems to address. Trade disputes. Mining rights. Not ancient human fantasies. He dismissed Sira with a wave of his arms. Return to your archives, child. Stop wasting the council's time. Security guards escorted Sira out of the hall. Behind her, the celebration resumed. Nobody wanted to think about uncomfortable possibilities. Not when everything was perfect. That night, Sarah sat in her small apartment and stared at the treaty. She thought about her ancestors. About humans she had never met, who might be fighting and dying in the darkness. The council did not care. But she did. Deep in space, far beyond council territory, something changed. Sensors that had been silent for centuries suddenly screamed warnings. Energy signatures, unlike anything in recorded history, were moving. Moving toward council space. Moving fast. On Paradise Station, a luxury resort world where the wealthy from a dozen species came to relax, people went about their evening. They ate fine food. They watched beautiful sunsets. They laughed and danced. And then, between one moment and the next, they were gone. All 4 million inhabitants, 12 different species, simply vanished. The station lights kept glowing. Music still played in empty halls, but every living thing had disappeared without a trace. In the silence, strange crystalline structures began to grow. The emergency alert reached the council headquarters at dawn. Paradise Station had gone silent. All communication channels were dead. Emergency beacons were not responding. 4 million people had simply stopped existing. Sarah heard about it during her morning shift in the archives. She immediately thought of the treaty. The threat humanity had warned about. But when she tried to contact the council chambers, her messages were blocked. After yesterday's scene, she was not welcome there. Zexthor called an emergency session. This is clearly a technical failure, he told the assembled delegates. Paradise Station is old. Perhaps a power malfunction caused a communication breakdown. We are sending repair ships. But 48 hours later, 3 more colonies went dark. New Terra, Bright Harbor, the mining complex at Vex 9. Millions more people. Gone. No distress calls. No explanations. Just silence. The council sent military investigation fleets. Sarah watched the news feeds with growing dread. She knew what they would find. Nothing. Because the threat was not something that left evidence behind in ways the council understood. The fleets arrived at Paradise Station first. The commander's report was broadcast live across council space. His voice was shaking. The station is intact. Power systems are running normally. But there is nobody here. Not one person. Not one body. The restaurants still have food on the tables. Beds are still warm. But every living thing is gone. The camera feed showed empty corridors, abandoned shops, children's toys scattered on the floor. And in the central plaza, something new. Crystalline structures, black as space itself, growing up from the floor. They pulsed with a light that hurt to look at. What are those? The commander asked. Nobody had an answer. The same structures appeared at every silent colony, growing, spreading, slowly consuming the empty stations and worlds. Scientists tried to study them. 3 research ships got too close. They also went silent. Sierra could not stay quiet anymore. She hacked into the Council's communication network and forced her message through. Check the outer reaches. That is where it is coming from. Humanity warned us. This time, Zexthor did not laugh. He was too frightened. The Council pulled up deep space sensor records. Data from the edge of the galaxy that nobody had looked at in decades. The readings were there. Had been there for weeks. Energy signatures moving toward Council space from the direction humanity had disappeared toward 247 years ago. The Council's automated systems had flagged them, but nobody paid attention. Why would they? Nothing dangerous came from the outer reaches. Ambassador Thelnara requested to speak. Her voice was heavy with regret. I must confess something to this council. 200 years ago, I was a junior diplomat. I was present when the humans came to us with their warning. They showed us data, evidence of an ancient threat. We voted to seal those records. We thought the humans were being paranoid. We did not want other species to panic over nothing. The hall erupted in angry voices. Delegates shouted at each other. Accusations flew. Zexthor demanded silence. The past does not matter now. We face a present threat. We will send our full military strength to establish a defensive perimeter. 500 warships. The largest battle fleet in Council history. We will stop whatever this is. The fleet assembled within 3 days. Sierra watched them depart on the news feeds. Massive ships representing 20 different species. The pride of galactic civilization. They jumped to hyperspace with confidence. Sierra tried to warn them. She sent messages to every fleet commander. Read the human treaty. They have been fighting this for 247 years. Ask them what they know. Nobody listened to an archivist. The fleet reached the edge of Council space and formed their defensive line. Their sensors immediately detected something ahead. Something massive. The fleet commander opened a channel to Council headquarters. We have contact with unknown structures. They are not matching any known technology. Approaching to investigate. That was his last clear message. What came next was chaos. Screaming voices, ships reporting impossible readings. Reality itself was breaking down near the structures. Then weapons fire, desperate orders, calls for retreat, and then static. All 500 ships, the entire fleet, gone in less than an hour. The Council chambers fell into stunned silence. Species that had not known war in centuries suddenly understood they were facing extinction, and they had no idea how to fight it. Sarah sat in her apartment and cried. Not for the Council, for humanity. Her people had been right. They had sacrificed everything to hold the line, and the galaxy had forgotten them. Her computer chimed. An encrypted message on a frequency so old, her system almost did not recognize it. Ancient human military codes. She opened it with shaking hands. The message was brief. They are coming. We are holding the line. Do not know how much longer. Tell them, we tried. Sierra's tears stopped. Her people were still out there, still fighting. She had to find them. Ambassador Thelnara appeared at Sierra's door that night. She said quietly, I always did. I was just too frightened to say it. Will you help me find the humans? We need to ask for their forgiveness and their help. Before Sierra could answer, alarms blared across Vatheron Prime. The Council's sensor network detected something entering their space. A single ship. Moving fast. And it was human. The ship was ancient, covered in burn marks and hull patches. Parts of it looked like they had been welded on from other destroyed vessels. It was firing its engines in reverse, still shooting at something behind it. Something the sensors could barely detect. something that bent light around itself. The ship broadcast on all frequencies. "This is HSCS Eternal Vigil. We are compromised. Do not approach. Repeat. Do not approach." But it was too late. The ship's reactors were failing. It was going to crash. Council defense forces scrambled to intercept it. They managed to grab it with tractor beams and pull it toward an emergency landing facility. The ship's engines died completely. It coasted in, trailing debris and frozen atmosphere. The thing that had been chasing it stopped at the edge of Council space. It hung there in the darkness, watching, waiting. Then, it slowly retreated back into the outer reaches. Medical teams rushed to the crashed ship. They cut through the damaged airlock. Inside, they found 47 humans. All of them were injured. Many were unconscious. Their uniforms were torn and patched. Their bodies carried scars from burns, radiation, and wounds no medical team recognized. The ship's commander was strapped into his chair, still conscious through force of will alone. His name tag read, Commander Jae-Sung Park. He looked at the Council medical team with eyes that had seen too much war. "Need to speak to the Council," he said. His voice was rough. "Have a message. From Earth. From all of humanity." He tried to stand and collapsed. The medical team caught him. His last words before losing consciousness were, "Tell them we held the line. Tell them we are sorry it was not long enough." Commander Park woke up 3 days later in a medical facility he did not recognize. Clean white walls, soft lighting. The air smelled recycled but fresh. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then, memory crashed back. The battle. The retreat. The jump into Council space. A nurse approached his bed. She was Valkorian, her scales a gentle green. "Please rest, Commander. You have been through severe trauma." "No time," Park said. His throat was dry. "Need to speak to the Council. Need to deliver the message. They are waiting," the nurse said quietly. "They have been waiting since you arrived." Park tried to sit up. Pain shot through his ribs. Broken. Probably. He had stopped counting his injuries years ago. The nurse helped him into a wheelchair. He hated being weak, but his legs would not support him yet. Too many combat stimulants, over too many years. His body was breaking down. They wheeled him through corridors filled with staring faces. Species from across the galaxy watched the human pass. Most had never seen one before. They whispered to each other. Some looked frightened. Good. Park thought. They should be frightened. The Council chamber was exactly as he remembered from history files. Beautiful, peaceful, untouched by war. He felt a flash of bitter anger. His people had been dying for 247 years, while these people celebrated in their safe halls. Zexthor sat at the center platform. He looked smaller than Park expected, frightened. "Commander Park," he said formally, "you requested to speak to this council." "We are listening." Park took a breath. The words he had to say had been carried by too many dying humans. Words he had promised to deliver if he ever got the chance. "The Devourers have broken through," he said. His voice carried clearly in the silent chamber. "We have held them for 247 years. Humanity has lost 18 billion people defending the barrier. We cannot hold anymore." In the barrier, the council chamber erupted in shocked voices. 18 billion. The number was too large to comprehend. Zexthor demanded silence. "Explain. What are these Devourers? Why did humanity never tell us?" Park laughed. It came out harsh and broken. "We told you. 247 years ago. You called us paranoid. You said the threat was impossible. So we stopped asking for permission and started doing what needed to be done." He pulled a data chip from his uniform pocket. His hands shook from exhaustion. "This contains everything. Our discovery. Our warning. Your refusal. And what we did next." Ambassador Thelnara took the chip and loaded it into the Council's main display. The data began to play. It started 250 years ago. Human deep space explorers found something in the outer reaches. Ruins. Ancient structures from a civilization that died thousands of years before. And in those ruins, a warning. The warning spoke of the Devourers. Entities that existed partially outside normal reality. They consumed everything. Matter. Energy. Life itself. They came in cycles. Every 10,000 years, they returned to feed. The ancient civilization had failed to stop them. They left their warning hoping the next civilization would succeed where they had failed. Humanity brought this evidence to the Council. The data showed Council leader Zexthor's predecessor dismissing it. Impossible, the old leader had said. Our science proves such entities cannot exist. The humans are seeing patterns in random data. The video showed human representatives pleading, "Please, even if you think we are wrong, help us prepare. Just in case." The Council voted. 47 species against. Only 16 for. The motion failed, so humanity made their choice. They evacuated their colonies near Council space. They pulled back their civilians. They converted their economy entirely to war production. Earth itself became a fortress world. Every human served the military in some capacity. Children were taught tactics before they learned to read, and they built the barrier. A defensive line stretching across dozens of star systems in the outer reaches. Thousands of ships, hundreds of battle stations, mines, weapons platforms, sensor nets, everything humanity could build. They waited. Some hoped they were wrong, that the Council was right and the threat would never come. Then, 17 years after humanity withdrew, the Devourers arrived. The display showed battle footage. Park watched the Council delegates' faces as they saw what humanity had been fighting. The Devourers were not ships. They were structures that bent reality around them. They did not follow physics. They could appear and disappear. They consumed everything they touched, leaving nothing behind. Not even atoms. Human ships threw themselves at the Devourers. Kinetic weapons, nuclear missiles, experimental energy weapons. Everything worked for a moment. Nothing worked forever. The Devourers adapted. They learned. They became harder to kill, so humanity adapted too. They developed new tactics, sacrifice plays, using ships as weapons when ammunition ran out, ramming runs, fighting in ways that did not make tactical sense but somehow worked against enemies that existed partially outside reality. The footage showed a young captain, maybe 25 years old, calmly ordering her crew to abandon ship before she rammed her destroyer into a devourer construct. She died with a smile on her face because her sacrifice saved a colony ship carrying 10,000 civilians. Park's voice was flat as he narrated, "That was my sister. She died 186 years ago. I was 12. After the funeral, I enlisted." The Council watched in horror as the scope of the war became clear. Hundreds of battles. Thousands of ships lost. Entire defense stations consumed. And always, humanity fell back, rebuilt, and returned to the line. "We have been fighting for 247 years, Park said. 7 generations of humans have known only war. We have lost 18 billion people. That is 90% of our pre-war population. Almost everyone. Earth's population is now 3 billion. All soldiers or support personnel. We have no poets anymore. No artists. No philosophers. Just soldiers and the people who keep soldiers fighting." He looked at Zexthor directly. "We did this for you. For all of you. Because someone had to stand in the darkness. We hoped you would join us eventually. But even when you did not, we kept fighting. Because that is what humans do." Zexthor looked like he might be sick. "Why did you not send another message? Another warning?" We did, Park said quietly. 53 times over the last 247 years. Every message was blocked by your automated systems. Marked as human propaganda. You did not want to hear from us. So eventually, we stopped trying. Ambassador Thelnara was crying. What can we do? How can we help? Park pulled up a star map. It showed the current battle lines. The Devourers had broken through in 17 places. Humanity was falling back toward their final defensive position, a line of battle stations they called the Solomon Line, built in orbit around humanity's remaining colony worlds. If you want to survive, Park said, send everything you have to the Solomon Line. We will teach you how to fight them. It is not complicated. You throw everything at them and hope some of it works. You sacrifice ships to buy time. You never give up. Ever. He paused. His next words were the hardest. But you need to hurry. The main Devourer fleet is moving. It is heading for Earth. Our projections give us maybe 30 days before the final assault begins. Earth has become our last fortress. If it falls, humanity is finished. And without us holding the line, the Devourers will sweep through Council space in less than a year. The Council chamber was silent. Every delegate understood what they were hearing. They had celebrated while humans died. They had prospered while humanity sacrificed everything. And now they had to face the consequences of their ignorance. Zexthor stood. For the first time, Park saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. Everything, Park said simply. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. And you need to understand something. Many of you will die. This is not the clean war you read about in history files. This is desperate survival. But maybe, if we all fight together, some of us will live through it. He looked around the chamber. Humanity has been dying for you for 247 years. Now it is your turn to stand with us. Commander Park collapsed back into his wheelchair. He had delivered his message. Now, it was up to them. In the corner of the chamber, Sarah Kim watched through a viewing window. Tears ran down her face. Her people had never abandoned the galaxy. They had saved it. And nobody knew until it was almost too late. The Council moved faster than anyone thought possible. Within 12 hours, every species with military capability received mobilization orders. This was no longer a request. It was survival. The fleet assembled at Vatharon Prime. 8,000 warships from 47 different species. The largest military force in galactic history. Crews that had never seen combat trained desperately with simulations based on human battle data. They learned tactics that went against every military doctrine they knew. Forget everything about clean warfare. Human instructors told them. The Devourers do not care about your tactics. They do not surrender. They do not negotiate. You hit them until they stop moving. And when your weapons are empty, you use your ship as a weapon. Sarah volunteered to go with the fleet. She was not a soldier, but she spoke both human and galactic standard perfectly. The fleet needed translators, coordinators, people who could bridge the gap between species that had never fought together before. Commander Park, barely recovered, insisted on going too. The doctors said he needed months of rest. Park told them he would rest when the war was over. They gave him more stimulants and let him go. The journey to the Solomon Line took 6 days at maximum hyperspace speed. They traveled through what had once been human territory. The ghost colonies. Sarah stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the sensor displays as they passed abandoned worlds. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at each one to refuel and resupply from automated human stations that still operated after 247 years. At each stop, they found memorial stations. Massive structures floating in space, covered in names. Sarah walked through one, with Ambassador Thelnara. The walls stretched endlessly, carved with billions of names. Every human who had died, holding the line. This memorial is for the Battle of the Outer Gate, Park explained quietly. He stood beside them, leaning heavily on a support cane. We lost 140 million people in that battle. It lasted for 3 years. We held 5 star systems against the Devourer advance. When it was over, only 2,000 humans survived from the entire defensive force. 1. Thelnara touched the wall gently. These were all soldiers? No, Park said. Soldiers, engineers, doctors, civilians who refused to evacuate, children who were old enough to load ammunition. Everyone fought. Everyone died together. Zex Thor, who had insisted on leading the council fleet personally, stared at the names. How did your people survive this? How did you not break? Park smiled sadly. We did break. Many times. We broke and rebuilt and broke again. But we never stopped. Because if we stopped, everyone died. Not just humans. Everyone. The fleet continued toward the Solomon Line. Sarah spent her time studying human military records. The battles. The losses. The victories. That cost everything. She learned about tactics with names like The Last Stand and Final Embrace, where humans would lock their ships together with Devourer constructs and overload their reactors, sacrificing themselves to destroy the enemy. She read reports from commanders who sent their children into battle because there was nobody else left. She saw footage of soldiers who kept fighting with injuries that should have killed them, sustained by nothing but will and combat drugs, and she understood. Her people had not become monsters. They had become what was necessary. The fleet arrived at the Solomon Line, and every sensor display lit up at once. The line stretched across 30 star systems. Massive defense stations, built from the hulls of destroyed ships. Weapons platforms that looked like they had been repaired 1,000 times. Minefields that stretched for millions of kilometers. And everywhere, human ships. Ancient Earth warships that should have been retired centuries ago. Cruisers and destroyers held together with welds and prayers. Fighters that looked like they had been built from spare parts. The fleet counted almost 4,000 human ships still fighting. 4,000 out of the tens of thousands humanity had started with. They were greeted by Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen, humanity's supreme commander. Her face appeared on every screen in the council fleet. She looked tired. More than tired. Exhausted down to her soul. The data file said she had been in command for 9 years and had not left her command chair in 3. Welcome to the real war, Chen said. Her voice carried no warmth. I am told you are here to help. Good. We need bodies. We need ships. We need anything you can throw at the Devourers because we are almost out of everything. She pulled up a tactical display. This is the current situation. The Devourers have broken through our outer defenses in 17 locations. We are falling back to secondary positions. Our projected casualties for the next week are 300 ships and 400,000 personnel. That is with your help. Without you, we would lose everything in 3 days. Zexthor spoke carefully. Admiral Chen, we are here to help however we can. But many of our crews have never seen combat. We need training. Chen laughed. It was not a happy sound. Training happens in battle now. You want to learn how to fight the Devourers? Watch what we do. Copy it. And try not to die in the first 5 minutes. She assigned council ships to human commanders. Mixed squadrons. Each one led by a human veteran who knew the tactics. The council delegates were not happy about taking orders from humans, but they were too frightened to argue. The first battle came 6 hours after the fleet arrived. Devourer constructs appeared at the edge of the Solomon Line. 3 massive structures that bent space around them. The human sensors screamed warnings. All ships, combat positions, Chen ordered. Council ships, stay behind the human line until you see what we are doing. Then support however you can. Sarah watched from the flagship as the battle began. It was nothing like the clean military actions she had seen in historical records. It was chaos. Human ships charged straight at the Devourer constructs. Weapons firing everything. Missiles, kinetic rounds, energy weapons, experimental devices that Sira did not even have names for. The Devourers absorbed most of it. Their reality-bending fields deflected or consumed incoming fire, but humanity had learned. They did not fire to destroy. They fired to destabilize, to create weak points in the Devourer's defensive fields. And when they found a weak point, they hit it with everything. A human destroyer identified a fluctuation in one Devourer construct. The captain immediately called for support. 15 human ships converged on that one point. They poured fire into it until the Devourer's field collapsed. Then a single human cruiser broke formation and rammed the exposed construct at full speed. The impact destroyed both the cruiser and the Devourer. 800 humans died. But the construct was eliminated. The council ships hung back, uncertain. Then, a Krillian captain made a decision. That human ship just saved this entire sector. We will honor their sacrifice. All ships. Attack pattern human Delta 3. Target the second construct. The battle lasted 4 hours. The combined fleet lost 39 ships. The Devourers were pushed back. It was a victory. But it did not feel like one. Park found Sira after the battle. She was in the medical bay, helping treat wounded from both human and council ships. "You understand now," he said quietly. "This is what we have been doing for 247 years. This battle. Every single day." Sira nodded. She could not speak. She had watched people die. Humans and non-humans. All fighting together against an enemy that should not exist. Over the next 2 weeks, the combined fleet fought 12 more battles. They learned to work together. Council ships followed human tactics. Humans taught them the sacrifice plays, the desperation maneuvers, how to keep fighting when everything seemed lost. Sarah watched as a young Velcorian pilot, fresh from training, made a ramming run against a Devourer construct to save her squadron. She watched as a Krillian commander, who had mocked humanity just weeks before, cried when giving the order that sent 20 of his ships to their deaths. The galaxy was learning what humanity had known for 247 years. Sometimes survival required terrible choices. And sometimes, heroes died without anyone remembering their names. Then the sensors detected something new. Something massive coming from deep space, moving toward Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every screen. Her expression was grim. The main Devourer fleet. Arriving early. All ships. Prepare to jump to Earth. This is it. The final battle. The jump to Earth took 18 hours. The entire combined fleet moved as one. 8,000 council ships and 4,000 human vessels. 12,000 warships carrying the last hope of galactic civilization. Sarah stood on the flagship's observation deck as they emerged from hyperspace. She had never seen Earth before. Her family had left human space generations ago. She expected to see a beautiful blue world like in the old pictures. Instead, she saw a fortress. Earth's surface was covered in weapons. Massive orbital defense platforms circled the planet like a metal ring. The moon had been hollowed out and converted into a weapons facility. Asteroid bases filled near-Earth space. Everything within 1,000,000 kilometers was a kill zone. "Welcome to humanity's last stand," Commander Park said beside her. He had barely slept in days, sustained by stimulants and will. "We spent 247 years preparing for this moment, hoping it would never come, knowing it would." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the command display. She was broadcasting to the entire fleet. "All ships. This is Admiral Chen. The Devourer main fleet will arrive in approximately 6 hours. This fleet is 300 times larger than anything we have encountered before. Our projections show we will lose 80% of our forces in the first hour of battle." Silence filled the communication channels. Those were death sentences for most ships present, Chen continued, her voice steady. But Earth has a weapon. Something we have been building for 200 years. A planetary-scale reality anchor. It will destabilize the Devourers and destroy their ability to bend space. But it needs 12 hours to charge and another hour to fire. Someone needs to hold the line for 13 hours. 13 hours. Against a fleet 300 times their size. It was impossible. I will not order anyone to stay, Chen said quietly. Any ship that wishes to evacuate has permission. No judgment. This is beyond what anyone should be asked to do. Sarah waited for ships to leave. Surely some council species would choose survival over fighting. Not a single ship broke formation. Zex Thor's voice came over the command channel. Admiral Chen, the council fleet will hold the line. We have been running from this fight for 247 years. We will not run anymore. Chen's expression softened for just a moment. Then let us buy humanity one more day. Fleet. Take defensive positions. Form a sphere around Earth. Human ships will anchor each section. Council ships will support. Remember your training. Remember the sacrifices that brought us here. And remember that, today, we all fight as one. The fleet moved into position. Sarah found herself assigned to coordinate between 3 human destroyers and a squadron of Velkorian cruisers. She set up her communication station and waited. The Devourer fleet arrived exactly when predicted. They emerged from hyperspace in a wall of darkness that blotted out the stars. Hundreds of massive constructs. Thousands of smaller structures, all of them pulsing with reality-warping energy. All ships, weapons free, Chen ordered. The battle began. The first wave of Devourers crashed against the defensive sphere like a tsunami. Human ships and council vessels fired everything. The space between Earth and the Devourer fleet became a hell of explosions, energy beams, and kinetic rounds. Sarah watched her tactical display as ships began to die. A human destroyer took a direct hit and exploded. A Krillian battleship was consumed by a Devourer construct, simply ceasing to exist. A wing of Velkorian fighters rammed a Devourer formation, sacrificing themselves to create an opening for the main fleet. She coordinated fire patterns, relayed targeting data, and tried not to think about how many people were dying with each red icon that disappeared from her screen. Commander Park commanded a small squadron of mixed ships. Sarah listened to his calm voice giving orders. Target the weak point at coordinates Delta 7. All ships, concentrated fire. Now. Fire. Fire. His squadron poured fire into a single Devourer construct. The construct's field destabilized. Park immediately ordered, ramming speed. This is Commander Park. It has been an honor serving with you all. Negative, Commander, a young voice interrupted. It was Lieutenant Min-Jun Lee, from one of the escort ships. You have given enough. This one is mine. Before Park could respond, Lee's ship broke formation and rammed the wounded construct at full speed. The explosion destroyed both the ship and the Devourer. Park's voice was rough. Honor to Lieutenant Lee. All ships. Continue the attack pattern. This happened again and again. Ships sacrificing themselves, creating openings, buying minutes with their lives. Human and non-human crews died together, fighting an enemy that should not exist. 3 hours into the battle, the defensive sphere had collapsed inward. They had lost 4,000 ships. The Devourers kept coming. Zex Thor's flagship was crippled, engines dead, weapons empty. A massive Devourer construct moved toward it. Sarah watched in horror. Knowing the flagship carried 12,000 crew members, a human destroyer appeared between the flagship and the Devourer. It was the HSCS Guardian, commanded by a 2-year-old lieutenant named Ji-Woo Han. She had been in command for 3 days after her captain was killed. Guardian to Council flagship, Han's young voice said calmly. You might want to evacuate now. This is going to be loud. Negative, Guardian. Zexthor responded. You do not have to do this. Yes, I do. Han said simply. Someone taught me that is what humans do. We stand in the darkness so others can see the light. Guardian out. The destroyer positioned itself directly in front of the Devourer construct. It fired every weapon. When the weapons were empty, Han ordered her crew to evacuate in escape pods. Then, she overloaded the reactor. The explosion tore through the Devourer construct and damaged 5 others. It also gave the flagship time to be towed to safety. Sarah was crying now. She could not help it. She was watching the bravest people in the galaxy die to protect others. Human and non-human. All of them, heroes. 10 hours into the battle, Admiral Chen's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships. Earth's weapon is at 90% charge. We need 3 more hours. 3 more hours. They had barely 3,000 ships left. The Devourers were at Earth's orbital defense ring. Reality was warping around the planet itself. Cities shook. Oceans churned. Earth's surface was beginning to destabilize. We cannot hold for 3 more hours. Someone said over the command channel. We will hold, Chen said flatly. Because if we do not, everyone dies. All ships. Fall back to final defensive positions. Protect Earth. Whatever it costs. The remaining ships pulled back to Earth's orbital platforms. They fought with desperate fury. When their weapons were empty, they rammed. When their ships were crippled, they used them as shields for others. Park's squadron was down to 2 ships, his own cruiser and 1 Velkorian destroyer. They were holding a section of orbital space against a dozen Devourer constructs. This is Commander Park, he said over the open channel. It has been an honor fighting beside all of you. Tell them we held the line. Negative, Chen's voice interrupted. You will tell them yourself, Commander. All ships, emergency jump. Get clear of Earth now. Admiral, we still have 2 hours left on the charge, someone protested. We fire now or we lose Earth, Chen said. All ships, jump. That is an order. The remaining ships jumped away from Earth. Sarah felt the hyperspace transition and emerged 100,000 kilometers from the planet. She immediately looked at her tactical display. The Devourers had breached Earth's inner defense ring. They were entering the atmosphere. Reality was breaking down across the entire planet. All crew, all stations, Admiral Chen broadcast. It has been my honor to serve with you. Humanity chose to stand in the darkness 247 years ago. Today, we stand together. Fire the weapon. Earth itself seemed to pulse. Energy built up from deep within the planet's core. Every weapon, platform, every defense station, every facility across the entire world fed power into a single system. Then, Earth fired. It was not a beam or a missile. It was a wave of stabilized reality itself, a pulse that spread outward from Earth at faster than light speed. Where it touched the Devourer constructs, they simply unmade. Their reality-bending fields collapsed. Their structures fell apart. They ceased to exist. The wave spread across the solar system, then beyond. It destroyed Devourer constructs in Earth orbit, in the asteroid belt, in the outer solar system, and it kept going, spreading outward into deep space where more Devourers waited. Sierra watched through sensors as the wave reached the outer reaches. Devourer constructs that had been there for 247 years simply vanished. The ancient threat that had destroyed civilizations was unmade in seconds. When it was over, space around Earth was empty, clear. The stars were visible again. The remaining fleet emerged from hyperspace. 3,000 ships out of 12,000. Every one of them was damaged. But they had survived. Earth's surface was scarred. Cities were damaged. Oceans were displaced. But the planet still stood. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every screen. She was crying. The Devourers are destroyed. All constructs, all formations, Earth's weapon reached farther than we projected. They are gone. It is over. The fleet erupted in celebration. Crews that had expected to die were alive. Species that had never known war had survived their first battle together. Sarah collapsed into her chair and sobbed. It was over. After 247 years, humanity's long vigil was finally over. 1 week later, the Galactic Council met on Earth for the first time in history. They met in a damaged building in what had been New York. The walls still showed scars from the battle. Zex Thor stood before Admiral Chen and the assembled human command staff. His 4 arms were lowered in the Krillian gesture of deepest respect. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer humanity our formal apology. We did not listen when you warned us. We celebrated while you died. We forgot you while you saved us. He gestured to the memorial wall behind him. Council workers had spent the week carving names. Every human who had died in 247 years of war. 18 billion names. We offer to rebuild your worlds, to repay the debt we owe. Admiral Chen, finally out of her command chair, stood with difficulty. She looked exhausted but unbowed. Keep your money. Rebuild your own worlds. What we want is simple. Keep these memorials. All of them. The ones in space. The ones on Earth. Keep them, and make your children visit them. Make them read the names. Make them understand what happens when people forget the ones standing guard in the darkness. She looked around the room at the assembled delegates. We did not do this for gratitude. We did this because someone had to, because that is what humans do when faced with impossible choices. We stand. We fight. We hold the line. Even when we are alone. Even when we are alone. Even when we are alone. Park, standing beside Chen, added quietly, and if you ever face another threat, another enemy, another impossible choice, remember that you do not have to face it alone. We will stand with you. As you finally stood with us. Sarah was appointed the first human council member in 247 years. Her first act was to propose a new treaty, one that required all species to maintain defensive forces, to train together, to never forget that peace was bought with sacrifice. The treaty passed unanimously. 3 months later, a ceremony was held in Earth orbit. A new memorial station was built. This one listed all the species who had fought together in the final battle. Human names, alongside Krillian, Velkorian, and 45 others. Commander Park stood at the ceremony, finally recovered enough to stand without support. A young Velkorian officer approached him. She had survived the battle commanding a destroyer after her captain was killed. Commander Park, she said formally, I wanted to ask, do you regret it? The 247 years. The sacrifice. Everything humanity lost. Park looked out at the stars. At the galaxy, his people had saved. We bought the galaxy, 247 years of peace. We gave billions of people lives they never knew were threatened. We stood in the darkness so they could live in the light. He smiled slightly. We would do it again. That is what it means to be human. Active. Thexem. Man. Earth's scarred surface slowly began to heal. Ships from 100 worlds stood guard together in orbit. Not because they were ordered to, because they had learned what humanity knew all along. The line must always be held, and no one should have to hold it alone. The emergency lights in the Galactic Council chamber cast red shadows across 200 different alien faces. Ambassador Jinsu Park stood alone at the center of the massive circular room, his dark suit a small patch of black against the towering representatives surrounding him. He did not look nervous. That itself was unusual. Commander Zekthar of the Vorath Empire rose from his platform, his 4 arms spreading wide in a gesture that every species present recognized as dominance. The Vorath were massive creatures, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin covered in bony ridges. Their eyes glowed a dull orange. and their teeth were designed for tearing meat. In the 200 years since they had joined the galactic community, they had conquered 47 star systems. Nobody had ever stopped them. Humans, Zekthar's voice boomed through translation devices. You are children playing in a garden you do not understand. Your species has been in space for only 80 years. 80 years. We have forgotten wars longer than your entire space history. Ambassador Park said nothing. He simply clasped his hands behind his back and waited. Zekthar's eyes narrowed. You have established 23 colonies in that short time. You spread like a disease, making friends with weak species, trading your primitive goods, acting as if you belong among the great powers. He leaned forward, and his voice dropped to a threatening growl. You do not belong. You are an infestation that must be controlled. The council chamber remained silent. The Quelari representative, a being made mostly of floating crystalline structures, dimmed her lights in what might have been concern. The Thexian ambassador, reptilian and ancient, closed his third eyelid slowly. They had all seen this before. The Vorath did not make empty threats. The Vorath Empire hereby delivers an ultimatum to the human species. Zekthar continued. You have 30 days to surrender all colonial holdings to our authority. Your colony ships will be impounded. Your trade vessels will be restricted to your home system. Your military, such as it is, will be dissolved. Earth will become a protectorate under Vorath guidance. He showed his teeth. This is mercy. This is the only mercy you will receive. And if we refuse? Park's voice was calm, almost curious. Zekthar laughed, a sound like grinding stone. If you refuse, we will demonstrate what happens to species who do not understand their place. We will burn your colonies one by one. We will shatter your stations. We will hunt down every human ship that dares to leave your home system. And when we are finished, humanity will exist only on Earth, a cautionary tale for other primitive species who think they can play among the stars. He paused. Do you know what happened to the Keltarians, the Movask collective? They chose to fight us. Now, ask any species in this chamber if they remember what the Keltarians looked like. Ask them where the Movask homeworld was. Silence answered him. The Keltarians and Movask had been completely erased from existence 70 years ago. Their worlds were lifeless rocks now. Even their cultural records had been destroyed. Park nodded slowly, as if considering this information for the first time. I understand. You are offering us the choice between submission and extinction. Finally, the primitive understands. Zekthar settled back into his seat. You have 30 days. The countdown begins now. We will respond within the stated time frame, Park said simply. The Vorath commander seemed disappointed by the lack of fear in the human's voice. You may leave. Go back to your little blue world and explain to your people how badly their diplomats have failed them. Park turned to leave, then stopped. He looked back at Zekthar with an expression that several species would later describe as strange. Not angry. Not afraid. Just evaluating. Commander, may I ask one question? Speak quickly, human. In all your conquests, how many species actually surprised you? Zekthar snorted. None. Weak species D, predictably. I see. Thank you for your honesty. Park walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the quiet chamber. As the human disappeared through the doors, the council erupted in whispered conversations. The Thexian ambassador leaned toward the Quelari representative. The humans are a pleasant species. It is unfortunate they arrived so late. They have no chance against the Vorath. Bezises represented. The Vorath. The Quelari dimmed thoughtfully. Did you notice his face? He did not seem worried. That, denial perhaps. Or ignorance. They are very young. Over the next 3 days, something unusual happened. Human civilian ships began returning to their home system from all corners of known space. Trade vessels broke their contracts. Colony supply runs were cancelled. Passenger liners changed course mid-flight. Within 72 hours, nearly every human civilian vessel was either in the Sol system or heading there at maximum speed. The human military went completely silent. This was noted by every intelligence service in the galaxy. The Vorath Military Command reviewed the reports with satisfaction. The humans were clearly evacuating, preparing to abandon their colonies without a fight. It was the smart choice. The cowardly choice, but smart. But some observers were not so certain. A Thexian intelligence analyst named Rixthan had been studying humanity since their first contact 80 years ago. He had watched them carefully, noting patterns that others missed. Humans smiled constantly, which made most species think they were harmless. They offered trade agreements before military pacts. They built schools on their colonies before fortresses. They seemed soft, but Rixthan had noticed something else. In 80 years, humanity had been involved in 17 minor conflicts with pirates, raiders, and aggressive species. They had won all 17, not through superior technology, which they did not have. Not through greater numbers, which they also lacked. They won through unusual tactics that no one expected. Rix then sent a coded message to the Galactic Council. Recommend caution. Human behavioral patterns suggest preparation, not retreat. No one listened. The Vorath were too powerful. Everyone knew how this would end. On the 5th day after the ultimatum, Ambassador Park sent a single message to the Galactic Council. It was brief. Humanity declines the Vorath terms. We will defend our sovereignty. Well. The message was followed by complete silence from all human channels. Zekthar laughed when he heard the news. Stupid primitives. They choose extinction. Very well. We will grant their wish. He did not notice that several species in the council chamber looked troubled. The humans had not sounded defiant in their message. They had not threatened or postured. They had simply stated a fact and gone silent. That silence worried those who were paying attention. Somewhere in the Sol system, in hidden facilities that had been built over the course of 70 years, humanity began final preparations. Weapons, systems that no other species knew existed, were brought online. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war everyone hoped would never come, received their deployment orders. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UHSV Indomitable, a ship whose existence was still classified, and looked at the countdown timer. 25 days, until the Vorath deadline. She smiled grimly. Let them come. Let them learn what it costs to threaten Earth. Intelligence Officer Krallis reviewed the surveillance data for the 3rd time. And for the 3rd time, the information made no sense. The humans were supposed to be panicking. They were supposed to be evacuating their colonies, begging for mercy, or preparing desperate last stands. Instead, they were doing something that looked almost like business as usual. Krallis was smaller than most Vorath, which made her suitable for intelligence work rather than frontline combat. Her orange eyes flickered as she processed the reports coming from assets across human space. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Report! Commander Zekthar growled as he entered the intelligence center. Sir, the human colonies are not evacuating. They are fortifying. Construction activity has increased by 300%. They are building defensive installations around all major settlements. Let them build walls. Walls did not save the Keltarians. Yes, sir, but there is more. Krallis brought up a star map. Human military vessels have disappeared from our sensors. All of them. We tracked 47 warships last week. Now we can find only 12. And those 12 are clearly decoys, broadcasting identification signals while performing obvious patrol patterns. Zekthar snorted. They are hiding. Cowards always hide. Perhaps. But our scout ships report unusual readings in 14 systems. Energy signatures that do not match any known human technology. Which means Which means, sir, that we may not know as much about human military capabilities as we assumed. The commander's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you suggesting the primitives are a threat to the Vorath Empire? Krallis knew she was taking a risk, but intelligence officers were trained to report facts, not comfortable lies. Sir, I am suggesting that a species does not survive 80 years of space exploration in a dangerous galaxy by being weak. I am suggesting that their choice to refuse our terms, despite our demonstrated power, implies confidence in their defensive capabilities. Zekthar was silent for a moment. Then he activated a display showing human history. I have studied these creatures. Krallis. They are fractured, chaotic. For thousands of years, they fought among themselves. They created weapons designed to kill other humans. They nearly destroyed their own world multiple times. He smiled. They are violent, yes, but violence without discipline is just noise. They have never faced an enemy like us. What Zekthar did not know, what no Vorath knew, was that human intelligence services had been studying them just as carefully. In fact, humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario since first contact with the galactic community. On Earth, in a facility buried 3 kilometers under the Australian outback, General Marcus Webb reviewed the final reports from Strategic Command. The room was filled with officers from every branch of human military service, and every face showed the same grim determination. All right, people. The Vorath think they know us. Let us review what they think they know. Webb activated a holographic display. They believe we have 47 warships. We actually have 412, most of which have never been detected because they have been running silent since construction. An Air Force colonel spoke up. Sir, the Vorath have studied our historical conflicts. They know we fight amongst ourselves. Correct. And they have drawn exactly the wrong conclusion from that information. They think internal conflict makes us weak. They do not understand that it made us innovators. Every human nation developed different military doctrines, different weapons, different strategies. When we unified for space exploration, we did not choose one approach. We combined all of them. A Navy captain asked, "What about their technology advantage?" The Vorath have been in space for over 1,000 years. Webb smiled coldly. Yes, they have. And their military technology has not significantly changed in 300 years. Do you know why? Because they have never needed to change it. Overwhelming force has always been sufficient. He pulled up another display. Meanwhile, humanity has been innovating constantly. We have designed weapons specifically to counter Vorath physiology, Vorath tactics, Vorath technology. We have run 10,000 simulations. We know their patterns better than they do. 2. Another officer raised her hand. General, the Council thinks we are being reckless. Some of our own civilian government officials think we should have accepted terms. I am aware. Webb's expression softened slightly. And I understand their fear. The Vorath have exterminated 2 species. That is terrifying. But here is what those officials do not understand. The Keltarians and the Movask were caught by surprise. They were not prepared. They thought they could negotiate after the Vorath attacked. They were wrong. He paused. We have been preparing for this since the day we learned about the Vorath. We will not be surprised. We will not be unprepared. And we will not negotiate after they attack, because we will not give them the chance. Back in Vorath space, Krallis received a new piece of intelligence that made her blood run cold. One of their deep cover agents had managed to intercept a fragment of human military communications. It was encrypted, but the encryption was deliberately weak, as if the humans wanted it to be decoded. The message contained a video file. Krallis opened it and watched. The video showed human soldiers conducting training exercises. But these were not ordinary exercises. The weapons they were using created effects that should not have been possible. Energy shields that absorbed direct hits from plasma weapons. Missiles that seemed to change direction in mid-flight. adapting to countermeasures in real time. Small fighter craft moving with impossible agility, pulling maneuvers that should have liquefied their pilots. The video ended with a simple message in Vorath language. Training footage from Colony Defense Forces. This is what our reservists can do. Imagine what our actual military can do. Kralis immediately brought the video to Zekthar. The commander watched it 3 times. His expression grew darker with each viewing. This is a deception. It must be. The humans are trying to frighten us with special effects. Sir, our technical analysts have reviewed the footage. They believe it is genuine. Then our analysts are cowards. Zekthar slammed his fist on the console. I do not care what tricks the humans have developed. We have conquered 47 systems. We have destroyed entire civilizations. Some primitive apes with clever toys will not intimidate the Vorath Empire. Kralis said nothing. She had delivered the information. What the commander did with it was his responsibility. 3 days later, Zekthar made his decision. The humans had insulted the Vorath by refusing their generous terms. They had dared to threaten the Empire with their ridiculous propaganda video. This could not stand. We attack in 3 days, he announced to the War Council. Not in 25 days as originally planned. We will catch them unprepared. The target is the human colony of New Sol, their largest settlement outside their home system. We will obliterate it as a demonstration, and then we will offer terms again. This time, they will accept. Kralis felt a sick certainty in her stomach. The commander was making a mistake. But she was only an intelligence officer. She had no authority to countermand his orders. The Vorath attack fleet assembled quickly. 200 warships, enough firepower to crack a continent. They entered FTL transit toward New Sol with absolute confidence. They emerged from FTL space expecting to find a panicking colony, desperately trying to evacuate civilians. Instead, they found nothing. New Sol was empty. The orbital stations were dark. The surface settlements showed no life signs. It was as if every human had simply vanished. In the center of the system, a single communications buoy waited. As the Vorath fleet approached, it activated and broadcast a message on all frequencies. Ambassador Jinsu Park's face appeared on every Vorath ship screen. Commander Zekthar, Park said calmly, you were given 30 days to reconsider. You have chosen to attack after 9. You were offered peace. You have chosen war. You threatened our colonies. You threatened our people. You promised extinction. Park's expression did not change, but his voice grew colder. You made the wrong choice. The transmission ended. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the Vorath sensors detected 400 human warships decloaking around them. Kralis, watching from the flagship, whispered a prayer to gods she did not believe in. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the Vorath attack fleet no longer existed. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos when the news arrived. 200 Vorath warships, an entire attack fleet, destroyed in 17 minutes. The numbers seemed impossible. The timeline seemed impossible. Everything about it seemed impossible. Yet, the sensor data did not lie. Thexian Ambassador Rix Than stood at his platform, his scaled hands gripping the railing as he watched the tactical replay for the 5th time. The humans had not simply defeated the Vorath. They had executed them with surgical precision. How? The Quelari representative's crystalline structure flickered with agitation. The Vorath have superior numbers, superior technology, 200 years of conquest experience. How did the humans do this? Rix then replayed the key moment. Watch carefully. The Vorath entered the system in standard attack formation. The humans were waiting, cloaked. When they decloaked, they were already in optimal firing positions. Every human ship targeted specific systems on Vorath vessels. Not the hulls, not the weapons. The engines and power cores, disabling shots, another ambassador observed. No. Killing shots. The humans knew exactly where to hit and what would happen when they did. Those Vorath ships did not just lose power. They suffered catastrophic core failures, chain reactions. Rixthan's third eyelid closed slowly. The humans have studied Vorath ship design so thoroughly that they turned their own vessels into bombs. A new transmission appeared on the central display. Ambassador Park's face filled the screen. He looked tired but calm. Members of the Galactic Council. Humanity has engaged Vorath military forces in self-defense after they attacked our colony at New Sol. We have prevailed. However, we take no satisfaction in this outcome. We gave Commander Zekthar 30 days to reconsider his ultimatum. He chose to attack after only 9 days. Park paused. One side, and we self-canto, and one side, the Vorath Empire declared their intention to exterminate humanity. We are simply responding to an existential threat with appropriate force. We will continue to respond until the threat is neutralized. The transmission ended. Appropriate force, the Quelari whispered. They destroyed an entire fleet. No, Rixthan corrected. They demonstrated capability. Now watch what they do next. What happened next surprised everyone except Rixthan. The human fleet did not attack Vorath worlds. They did not target civilian populations. They did not bombard cities or industrial centers. Instead, they began systematically destroying infrastructure that most species would not even think about. Mining operations in asteroid fields, refueling stations in deep space, communications relay satellites, automated cargo vessels, supply depots, everything that supported the Vorath military machine but posed no threat to civilian life. Within a week, Vorath military forces began experiencing supply shortages. Within 2 weeks, their fleet movements became restricted due to fuel limitations. Within 3 weeks, their military communications network was operating at 30% capacity. Commander Zekthar watched his empire crumble with growing rage and confusion. The humans were fighting a war he did not understand. Where were the glorious space battles? Where were the invasion fleets? The humans were acting like parasites, nibbling away at the foundations of Vorath power instead of facing them directly. Find their fleet, he ordered Krallis. Find them and destroy them. Sir. We cannot find them. They strike and disappear. Our sensors cannot track them when they cloak. Then attack their colonies. Make them come to us. Krallis pulled up a star map. Sir, we tried. 3 separate task forces were sent to human colonies. All 3 were destroyed before reaching their targets. The humans are not defending their colonies. They are hunting our ships. Zekthar stared at the map, showing Vorath territory. Red markers indicated destroyed facilities. There were hundreds of them. This is not honorable warfare. This is cowardice. Sir, with respect, this is effective warfare. Our military is being strangled. We cannot sustain operations at current levels for more than 2 months. 2 months is sufficient to crush primitives, but it was not sufficient. The Vorath Empire had been built on conquest and maintained through constant resource extraction from conquered systems. Their economy was a military economy. Everything supported the war machine. When that machine began to fail, the entire empire began to fail with it. Civil unrest started on the outer colonies. Vorath civilians who had never questioned their government began asking difficult questions. Why were the humans winning? How could primitives defeat the mighty Vorath? Was their leadership incompetent? Zekthar made a decision born of desperation. If the humans would not engage in honorable combat, he would force them to. He ordered strikes on human civilian targets. Stations, trade vessels, even colony ships filled with families. The orders were transmitted. They were never executed. Every Vorath ship sent to attack civilian targets was intercepted and destroyed before reaching their targets. The humans had predicted this escalation. They had positioned forces to prevent it. The civilian vessels Zekthar thought he was targeting had been evacuated weeks ago. Krallis understood then what was happening. The humans had not been lucky. They had not been clever in the moment. They had planned this entire war before it started. Every Vorath move had been anticipated, countered, and turned into a trap. "Sir," she said quietly. "They knew. They knew everything we would do." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that the humans have been studying us since they first learned we existed. They analyzed every conflict in our history. They identified our patterns, our tactics, our strategies. They built their entire military specifically to counter us." Krallis brought up comparison data. "Look at their weapons, their ships, their doctrine. Everything is designed to exploit Vorath weaknesses we did not know we had." Zekthar looked at the data and felt something he had not experienced in his long military career. Fear. A new transmission came through. Not from Ambassador Park this time, but from Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of human military forces. "Commander Zekthar, this is your final warning. Surrender now. Order all Vorath military forces to stand down. If you continue this war, we will continue to dismantle your military capacity. We will not stop until you are incapable of threatening anyone, ever again." Zekthar's rage overcame his fear. "Never. The Vorath do not surrender to primitives." Admiral Chen's expression did not change. "Then you have chosen your fate. What happens next is your responsibility." The transmission ended. Over the next 2 weeks, humanity escalated their campaign. They stopped being subtle. Vorath military shipyards were destroyed. Training facilities were obliterated. Command centers were reduced to rubble. Every single installation that produced or supported Vorath military forces became a target. The Vorath tried to fight back, but they were fighting blind. Their communications were compromised. Their supply lines were severed. Their ships ran out of fuel and ammunition. Entire fleets were stranded in deep space, helpless. On the 37th day since the original ultimatum, Krallis received intelligence that made her sick. A Vorath battle group, operating independently and refusing to surrender, had armed a planet cracker weapon. They were heading toward Earth. They intended to kill billions of humans in one final act of vengeance. She immediately sent the information to human forces. The response was immediate and devastating. The rogue battle group was intercepted 3 light-years from Earth and destroyed down to the last ship. The humans had not taken chances. They had not shown mercy, but they did something else that surprised Krallis. They sent her a message. "Intelligence Officer Krallis, thank you for the warning. You saved lives today, both human and Vorath. We will remember this." She stared at the message for a long time. The humans could have killed her entire species by now. They had the capacity. Instead, they were thanking her for doing the right thing. Perhaps the humans were not the monsters Zekthar had claimed they were. Perhaps the monsters had been Vorath all along. Galactic Council emergency session resumed. Ambassador Park stood once again in the center of the chamber. The Vorath Empire attempted to deploy planet cracker weapons against Earth. This represents attempted genocide. We can no longer accept partial measures. The Galactic Council must act, or humanity will act alone. The council chamber fell silent. Every species present understood what Park was saying. The humans were done playing defense. The question now was whether anyone could stop what came next. The planet cracker missile traveled through space at near light speed, aimed directly at Earth. It was an old Vorath design. Crude, but effective. When it detonated, it would create a chain reaction in the planet's mantle that would split continents and boil oceans. Billions would die. Commander Zekthar had launched it himself from his flagship, the last functioning Vorath military vessel of significant size. His crew was down to skeleton numbers. His empire was in ruins, but he would not die knowing the humans had survived. If the Vorath Empire ended today, humanity would end with it. "Distance to target?" he asked. 18 minutes to Earth orbit, Commander." Zekthar smiled. 18 minutes. until humanity learned the price of humiliating the Vorath. He did not know that Earth's defense grid had been watching the missile since the moment it launched. He did not know that the Sol system had been fortified for 60 years, ever since humanity first encountered hostile aliens. He did not know that what was about to happen had been planned and practiced 10,000 times. Admiral Chen stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface, watching the missile's trajectory on her display. Around her, hundreds of officers worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. Interceptors away. Her tactical officer reported, 300 defense satellites, hidden among orbital debris and disguised as civilian equipment, activated simultaneously. They did not fire weapons. Instead, they generated an overlapping network of gravitational fields, creating a maze of spatial distortions that would shred anything trying to pass through. The Planet Cracker missile hit the first field and immediately began to tumble. Its guidance system tried to compensate, but the gravitational interference was too severe. It veered off course by 17 degrees. That was enough. A human interceptor, a small craft barely larger than a fighter, matched velocity with the missile and deployed an electromagnetic pulse directly into its control systems. The missile went dead, its warhead still armed but its guidance destroyed. A recovery team carefully secured the weapon and towed it away from Earth. The entire interception took 43 seconds. On Zekthar's flagship, the crew watched in disbelief as their final weapon failed. "Impossible," Zekthar whispered. The missile was already at attack velocity. Nothing can intercept at that speed. Kralis, still at her station despite the deteriorating situation, pulled up the sensor data. "Sir, Earth is surrounded by defense systems we never detected. The entire star system is a fortress. They have been building these defenses for decades. Then we strike with everything we have left. Ram the flagship into Earth, if we must. Sir, we have nothing left. This ship is the last." Zekthar looked around his command deck. She was right. Every other vessel was destroyed or stranded. The mighty Vorath Empire, 200 years of conquest, reduced to one damaged flagship. "Then we be fighting," he said. Kralis made a decision in that moment. She pulled her sidearm and pointed it at Zekthar. "No. We surrender. I will not let you kill the last Vorath crew." In a pointless gesture, Zekthar stared at her in shock. "Traitor. Realist, sir. You have already lost this war. Do not lose our species as well." Before Zekthar could respond, the ship's communications activated without input from the crew. A human voice filled the bridge. "Vorath flagship. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Human Space Forces. Your weapons are locked by our electromagnetic countermeasures. Your engines are disabled by gravitational fields. You cannot fight. You cannot flee. You cannot self-destruct." There was a pause. "Commander Zekthar, you attempted to exterminate my species. You tried to kill 8 billion civilians. You launched a weapon designed to crack my homeworld. Do you understand what you have done?" Zekthar said nothing. "You have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. You have forced us to make a decision we hoped never to make." Chen's voice was cold, completely devoid of emotion. "Your attack on Earth will be analyzed by every species in the galaxy. They will study the weapon you used. They will note that you deliberately targeted civilians. They will understand that you chose genocide. Get to the point, human." Zekthar snarled. "The point, Commander, is that you have set a precedent. The Vorath Empire has demonstrated that it will attempt total extermination when faced with defeat. Therefore, the Vorath Empire can no longer be permitted to exist in any form that might threaten others." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kralis understood immediately. "You are going to erase us, like we erased the Keltarians and the Movask." "No," Chen replied, "not like you did. We will not kill civilians. We will not destroy your culture. We will not glass your worlds. But we will ensure that the Vorath can never threaten anyone again. Every military installation will be destroyed. Every weapons facility will be demolished. Every warship will be reduced to scrap. Your species will survive, but your empire will not. You cannot do this, Zekthar said, but his voice lacked conviction. We already are. Human forces are currently engaging remaining Vorath military targets across all 47 systems. We are broadcasting on all frequencies, warning civilians to evacuate military zones. We are giving them time to leave, but the facilities themselves will be destroyed. Kralis checked her console and found it was true. Across Vorath space, human forces were systematically obliterating every structure, every ship, every installation that had military purpose. They were being thorough. They were being relentless. But they were not targeting civilians. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Ambassador Park stood in the center of the chamber as accusations flew from every direction. You are committing genocide, the Quillari representative shouted. No, Park replied calmly. We are removing a military threat. Vorath civilians are not being harmed. We are destroying infrastructure, not people. You are destroying their civilization. We are destroying their ability to destroy others. There is a difference. The Thexian ambassador, Rixthan, spoke up. Ambassador Park, the Council understands humanity's anger. The Vorath attempted to crack Earth. But this response is excessive. You are essentially erasing the Vorath as a galactic power. Yes, Park said simply. That is exactly what we are doing. You will be seen as monsters. Park's expression hardened. Better to be seen as monsters than to be extinct. Every species in this chamber has faced similar choices. You just had the luxury of making them when no one was watching. He activated a display showing historical data. The Thexians eliminated the Corsair clans completely. The Quillari rendered the Dresh unable to travel between stars. The Hexati created a plague that sterilized the Vecnil. Shall I continue? Tress. The chamber fell silent. We studied